My apologies again. I do not have the printed out notes. Not only were we out of ink in our main office, but my printer for some reason is just on the fritz. It's worse than it was last week. So, but of course, the notes are there. If you guys got your phones or your iPads, you guys can download them and follow them. Plus, they're right behind me. They're on the screen, so you guys can see them there as well. I actually had to email myself the notes. Not that I think I can probably read that, but we'll try. All right, so our opening verse for today is going to come out of the Gospel according to John, chapter 5, and verse 24. Oh, and before I even start, I just found out Sister Nancy's in the hospital. I didn't know that, so keep her in prayer. Of course, Sister Barbara as well. Keep them in prayer this week, if you would, for all the things that they're going through. We'd appreciate that. Gospel of John, chapter 5 and verse 24. It says the following. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who hears my word and believes in him who sent me possesses everlasting life and does not come into judgment, but has passed from death into life. And for a few moments this morning, the title and the topic of the message is Death to Life. Death to life. If you know the prayer at home, please pray it with us. Everybody here. Father, give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts that are willing to obey. In the Master's name, amen. Amen. Hey, that was beautiful worship today, wasn't it? I really enjoyed that. That was awesome. From death to life. What a neat picture. I know it didn't come out on the YouTube. We'll make sure we edit it later. But what a great, great picture. That's the burning of the red heifer. And obviously we're going to touch on that in just a little bit. But what I like to do, hopefully we've been doing for a while, I want to help you to understand our faith better, to be able not just to understand it, but be able to relate it to someone else, to be able to share this message with other people, to understand what it is that we do believe, what it is that the gospel is actually about. And there's so many different working parts to it. So today I want to talk about death. I want to talk about death and I want to talk about life. Those are certainly topics that everybody can relate to in our culture. Death, life, and also sickness. We're gonna touch on that as well. So I want to talk about. I want to go into. I know we're starting off in John, but like we always do, we're going to go around the mountain 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then we're going to get back to it, and hopefully it will all make sense by the end of it. So follow along with me, please. We're going to look at we're going to look at an account of the ministry of the Master. On two different occasions. It's really the same occasion, but 2 different acts of his miraculous ability to heal, to minister. And the first is this is the Gospel according to I think this is Luke. Let me just make sure here on my notes. Yeah, Gospel according to Luke, and this is the story of the woman that has the issue of blood. You can see in the picture there, of course, that's the picture. There's 2 stories that actually go on in this account. There's the woman with the issue of blood, and then there is Jairus' or Yair's daughter. She's dying. So actually he winds up getting the information that the daughter's dying, and he's on his way to the chief of the synagogue's home, and that's where he meets the woman with the issue of blood. So with all of that, it says, and the woman, having a flow of blood for 12 years, who having spent all her livelihood on physicians, was unable to be healed by any, came from behind and touched the tzitzit of his garment, and immediately her flow of blood stopped. And Yeshua said, who touched me? And when all denied it, Kepha and those with him said, Master, the crowds throng you and press upon you, and you say, who touched me? But Yeshua said, somebody did touch me, for I knew power went out from me. And the woman, seeing that she was not hidden, came trembling and falling down before him. She declared to him in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she was healed immediately. And he said to her, take courage, daughter. Your belief has healed you. Go in peace. All right, so this is the one part of the story, and I'm actually mixing, we're sort of breaking it up because it starts with Jairus' daughter. But here's the healing of the woman that has an issue of blood. I want you to notice a couple things. They are in orange there, that she was healed. The issue that she had needed to be healed. Now it says, of course, she went to physicians her whole life. Nothing came of that. And it is finally when she sees the Messiah, and obviously all of the wonderful and amazing things that he was doing, she obviously heard about it. She breaks through the crowd to make sure that she can touch the tzitzit on his garment, and in doing that, she is healed. Now, it says her faith healed her. I want to make an addendum to that, because we read that, and so often there's a lot of sort of those hyper faith groups out there that just talk about faith. It's not just faith, it's the one in whom you have faith that is the issue. She didn't just have faith, and can't have faith in anything. She had faith that when she touched him, this issue would be done. So that may not be an important part to us, but some that are watching, and certainly we hear out there people just saying, all you have to do is have faith. It doesn't matter what kind of faith you have. No, it does. It matters who your faith is in, who it is that you're directing it to. And obviously she was directing it at Elohim, but at his servant there, Messiah. Why is this an issue? Why is this a big thing? Why is this story here? Well, because it's part of a much, much bigger narrative. This is important because when you go to the book of Leviticus and chapter 15, if you guys are following on your iPhones, this is number 4. But when you go to Leviticus chapter 15, it kind of gives us a little bit of background as to exactly what's going on with this woman and why she would have kept it so secret. Because it says that she makes her way through the crowd, right? She doesn't want to, I guess, be seen. She touches it. Everybody's, what happened? What happened? The master knows something happened. And ultimately, she does confess, yes, it was me. So she wanted to keep this thing secret, at least as quiet as possible. But obviously, she could not. And here's why. This is Leviticus chapter 15, starting at verse 25. And it says, this is Abba giving instruction through Moses to the house of Israel concerning the tabernacle, concerning what is clean and what is unclean. Now, I got to make an addendum here before we go any further, because sometimes I think the concept of unclean we misunderstand. Just because you are unclean does not mean that you're evil or wrong or anything like that. To be unclean as an individual means something happened, and there's a whole list of all the different things that can happen. But what it means is that if you are unclean, you cannot approach the tabernacle. You can't come to give your offering. You can't do anything. You are unclean. You are unfit physically to actually approach the very tabernacle. You can see on the picture there, it's supposed to be a picture of the wilderness, and there's a woman there trying to get in, and you see the high priest stopping her. That's the concept that we're reading here, or the concept I want in your mind. So verse 25 says, and when a woman has a discharge of blood for many days other than the time of her monthly separation. So he's not just talking about the monthly cycle, which is what this woman has a problem with. At the time of her monthly separation, or when she discharges beyond her usual time of monthly separation, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of her monthly separation. She is unclean. Any bed on which she lies in all the days of her discharge is to her as a bed of her monthly separation. And whatever she sits on is unclean, and the uncleanness of her monthly separation. And anyone who touches them is unclean, and shall wash his garments, and shall be bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, Then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she is clean. Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness. And here's the verse that really matters. Lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my dwelling place, which is in their midst. So the whole concept of being unclean means you cannot approach the tabernacle. Later on, of course, that would become the temple. In that condition, whatever condition it is, because it's only one of many different conditions that would make a person unclean, you just weren't allowed to come to the tabernacle or the temple. And there was, of course, a set amount of time, set procedures that you had to go through. And he was teaching that there's something about this situation, there's something about this being unclean that prohibits you from entering into the house of Elohim. And this has everything to do with what we talked about last week. Remember, Adam and Eve are kicked out. They are removed. They cannot go back into that place until the whole thing gets remedied. And of course, it is Messiah who remedies it. But this is the context that I want you to understand for the story of this woman, because this says, whoever she touches or whatever she touches is also unclean. So obviously, she's been dealing with this for quite a few years. 12, it tells us. It's going to tell us later on, or in the beginning, that Jairus' daughter was also about 12 years old. And obviously, the spiritual implication there is he's talking to the house of Israel. He's talking to all 12 tribes. All 12 tribes. And by extension, all of us are in this situation. So it's real to the people that it's happening to. It's a literal story, but obviously it has bigger implications for all of us. So she knows that if she touches people, or whatever it is that she does touch, makes that person unclean. So let's just, as a for instance, Passover's coming up. And let's say there was a tabernacle, a temple today. Well, prior to going to Passover, you would go through whatever ritual it was, and there was a ritual, had to do with the red heifer and all the rest of that, where you would make yourself clean. If you had touched a dead body, we're going to get into that in a second, or any of these issues. And when you got to Jerusalem, you wanted to stay in that clean relationship. And we're just talking about physically clean, bodily clean, not necessarily heart, but bodily clean. You wanted to be in that situation, or else you couldn't do what? You couldn't go up to the altar. You couldn't go get the lamb. You couldn't go to the temple. You couldn't do any of that stuff. At least you had to go through the whole procedure. And very often, not very often, the procedure took a week. It took a week to get clean. So when we read, and the master talks about yelling at the Pharisees and just really ripping them apart, and he says, you like whitewashed sepulchres, right? You look good on the outside, but on the inside, you're full of dead men's bones. Well, the reason for the whitewashed sepulchres is when people were coming to Jerusalem from outside, coming for the feast or whatever it is to bring your offerings, they marked all of the tombs with whitewash, with what we would call white paint. And the idea was, you could see it from a distance and know, oh, there's dead bones in that place. So if you are ceremonially clean, what do you not want to touch? The grave, the dead bones. Or else you would now be ceremonially unclean and you couldn't go in and do whatever business it was that you were going to do in the temple or in the tabernacle. So that's just to give you some context for it. So everything this woman touches becomes what? Unclean, including people. Including, or probably most importantly, people. And what does she do? She touches the master. She touches the master. Obviously, he realizes it, and her issue is healed. And he tells her that. It was healed. Remember that. This is a healing. Now, this is kind of an easy one to wrap our minds around and say, okay, that was a healing. She had an issue going on for a long, long time. Now she is healed of that. Second part of the story, also from the Gospel of Luke, and the story of the woman with the issue of blood. This is, if you're following, number 5 on your notes. And it says, and see, there came a man whose name was Jair, or Jairus. And he was the ruler of the congregation, the synagogue. And falling down at the feet of Yeshua, he was calling upon him to come to his house because he had an only daughter about 12 years of age, and she was dying. So this is really the verse before what we just read. This happens first, then he meets the woman with the issue of blood as he's on his way. But I'm just cutting and pasting here verses to make the story more continuous. So, where was I? About 12 years of age, and she was dying. And as he went through the crowds, they thronged upon him. That's where the verses we just read come in. So, the whole thing with the woman occurs. It's done, it's over. He's about to continue on his way to Jairus' house, and the following happens. While he was still speaking, someone came from the ruler of the congregation's house, saying to him, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher any further." And Yeshua, having heard, answered him, saying, "Do not be afraid, only believe, and she shall be healed." And coming into the house, he allowed no one to go in except Kepha and Yaakov and Yochanan and the girl's father and mother. And they were all weeping and mourning for her. And he said, "Do not weep, she is not dead, but asleep." And they were laughing at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called her, saying, now this comes out of Mark chapter 5. He actually translates this. It's Talisa Kumi, which is Aramaic for little girl, get up. Here it says, "Child, arise." And her spirit returned, and she rose up immediately. And he directed that she be given food to eat, and her parents were astonished. But he ordered them not to say to anyone what had taken place. Now, first of all, if that happens and the master says to you, "I don't want you to tell anybody what just happened," what's like the first thing you're going to do? You got to tell. How many times through the gospel does he do something? He says, "Go to the priest and tell them but don't tell anybody who I am." Really? Come on. You've all, as somebody's come up to you at some point and said, "Hey, listen, can I really share a secret with you?" And they share that secret. What's the first thing you want to do after you get the secret? You want to tell somebody. You got to tell somebody. It's just in us. So I think that's a little cruel, but funny anyway. Don't tell anybody what just happened. Meanwhile, the whole household knows that the little girl had just passed away. So two different stories. One of a sickness, and obviously this girl was sick, but her sickness led to death. But when Messiah comes in, he says she's not dead, she's sleeping, and he wanted to heal her. I want you to see the comparison here. He is putting both sickness and death on the same level that needs healing. Everybody caught that? Sickness and death, he both says they need to be healed. The one with the issue of blood, and here this little 12-year-old girl. She needed to be healed. And of course, he says, of course, she's sleeping. That's from his purpose. And he's not talking about soul sleep or things like that. Because I know we'll hear that from time to time from different groups, that when you die, you sleep. He's talking about the flesh. He's talking about this body. This body goes to sleep. It's like it goes to sleep. Whole other message, whole other thing about what happens to us after. Very, very different thing. But he's not telling us that it is sleep. But it occurs multiple times that sleep is used to describe the state of death, because when we go to sleep at night, what happens to us? Hopefully, you go to sleep quickly, you get a sound sleep. Do you remember anything? Nothing happens. I mean, sometimes if you have eat something late before you go to bed or bad, you may have some wild dreams, or I don't know, sometimes I remember dreams, sometimes I don't. Most of the time, if you're ever gone to bed, you put your head down the pillow, and the next thing you know, the alarm is going off. And you thought, I just fell asleep. That's what he's comparing death to. That the body may not be conscious of what's going on, but when you sleep, are you conscious? Of course you are. You're thinking, your body, your mind's going through all sorts of different things, and you got pictures and images coming in. you're still active. So I think that's really what it means when he's talking about sleep. Not the idea of soul sleep, that we're just in this negative state. There is a consciousness to us, but he's talking about the flesh. It's going to seem like a moment for the flesh. Anyway, that aside, he winds up healing this little girl. They laughed at him, right? They laughed at him. Then we're talking about the people that are mourning, professional mourners. They would have gotten there, started crying for her. Wailers, they call them. And they giggle. I don't know, hopefully they didn't laugh. They probably just giggled like, really? We know she's dead. And of course, he does heal her. The context for this, why are these two things related? Because not only is he putting death and sickness on the same level, both of them are unclean. As a matter of fact, what is the most unclean thing there is? Death. Death is the most, which is why you whitewash the sepulchres. So when you go into Jerusalem, you don't accidentally touch one and make yourself unclean and then have to go through whatever the process is. So we've got a woman with an issue of blood who is unclean. Everything she touches becomes unclean. She touched him. Then he goes to Jairus' house. We're going to find out, let me tell you now, even if you go into the house of someone who is dead, you become ceremonially unclean. He went to the house. Didn't just go to the house, he went right to the little girl. She was unclean, and this is me, I think he touched her. I think he touched her. Not just spoke, I think he touched her, but that's me. Either way, he's in the house, which would make him unclean. If he were us, it would make him unclean. And actually, it does. Here's the context for this so that you understand a reference point. This is out of the book of Numbers, chapter 19 and verse 9. Now, this is about the red heifer. We'll talk about that in a second. But one of the purposes, two of the main purposes of burning a red heifer, doing that offering of the red heifer, was to take those ashes and to put them in water. They were to be used for making that which is unclean, clean again. But it was a procedure. There was time that went up, but that's the main purpose, especially for death, but also for anointing the temple, for cleansing the temple and making it. So we hear a lot today about the red heifer in Israel, and everybody wants the red heifer. We see the red heifer, things are happening. We're going to get into that in a second, but everybody's, the Messiah is coming, the red heifer's there, the temple's going to be made. We're going to find out, even if that happens, that's actually going to wind up being a very blasphemous thing in the context of the entire story of who Messiah actually is. But here's some of the instruction about the red heifer and being clean. Numbers chapter 19, I'm starting at verse 9. This is number 6 on your notes. It says, "And a clean man shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and shall place them outside of the camp in a clean place." So the verses that we just skipped was, and we're going to look at them in a second, was that they take the red heifer, they bring it outside the camp, they burn it on cedar wood. They have just like the picture was in the beginning, a red cloth. They have some hyssop. They burn the thing. Everybody that is part of this thing, it had to be a red heifer that was pure, right? It could no spots, no blemishes. We hear about that all the time today. It had to be pure. But once that red heifer was killed, that which was pure now becomes what? Unclean. The red heifer is unclean. And everybody that's standing around doing the procedure, the priest, the high priest, all the other priests that are there, that are part of this whole burning of the red heifer, guess what happens to them? They all become unclean. And the procedure winds up to be that the ashes are done. When it comes to entirely ash, when the whole thing is burnt, they pick up those ashes and they pick a guy to go take the ashes to a clean place. Normally to a little hole in the wall, something that has never been touched by death or anything else that is unclean. And you put the ashes in a jar and you put it in that hole, and it has to stay there for 3 days. And then you bring water and you put water in it, and that water with the ash together, that which was unclean, is now used to make everything else what? Clean, because now it is considered clean. You're already probably getting ahead of me and starting to think, okay, this is making sense now. We're going around the mountain, but I got that one. 3 days, very, very similar. Not similar, it's intended to be that way. But the guy who brings the ashes to this clean place, guess what he is? Unclean, because he's touching something. So the heifer's clean, then it's unclean, and then it's clean again. And then it cleanses everybody else. Obviously, you know where I'm going with this. Numbers chapter 19, verse 9. And a clean man shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and shall place them outside of the camp in a clean place. And they shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for the water of uncleanness. It is for cleansing from sin. He who touches the dead of any human being is unclean for 7 days. He is to cleanse himself with the water on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he is clean. But if he does not cleanse himself on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he is not clean. Anyone who touches the dead of a human being and does not cleanse himself defiles the dwelling place of Yahuwah, and that being shall be cut off from Israel. He is unclean. For the water of uncleanness was not sprinkled on him. His uncleanness is still upon him. So we've got 2 examples from the Torah describing to us that if an individual is unclean, they cannot approach the tabernacle, the dwelling place, the temple. If you do, when it was with the issue of blood, you will die. And if you do with death here, you will be cut off, which is kind of the same concept. You will be, if you don't do what is necessary on the 3rd day, the 7th day means nothing. That's a prophecy. If we don't have our mindset and understand the cleansing that needs to take place on the 3rd day, we will not see the 7th day. I'll get back to that in a second. And you can see the picture there. There's a priest, and he's taking the ashes and the water, and he's mixing them together. Now that it's clean, and they would take that, and they would store that, and you only need a very, very little bit of it, and there would be ceremonies to do it. And this is the practice that went on through the house of Israel from the time of Moses all the way up to the time of Messiah, and until the destruction of the temple. So this is all about, or uncleanliness is all about what restricts us from entering into Abba's house, entering into the temple, the tabernacle. You need to be clean to do that. Without it, you cannot enter in. All right, so I said this already a minute ago, but we talked about this last week. Now remember, the Messiah is connecting this uncleanness, at least the story is connecting the uncleanliness of a sickness that lasts for a long, long time with the uncleanliness of death, the little girl. And we now see in the actual Torah, they are the equivalent because both of them stop you from entering into the house of Elohim. This whole story, if you were here last week and you saw last week's message, what's the whole purpose of this whole thing? To get us back to where? The house of Elohim. We are all trying to get back to the house of Elohim. That's the whole story. We get kicked out of the garden, or our ancestors get kicked out of the garden. Why? Because they are unclean. They now have death on them. And nothing that is unclean can stay in the temple of Elohim. So they get removed out of the temple. And then all of these instructions are given to us to teach us the process over time, not just of temple ceremonies. They were true, they were real, they were tutors, they were teachers, but they were there to help us understand something so much bigger. They could not actually get us to the real house of Elohim. They could only get us to doing these ceremonies, to the example on earth, to the temporary example of a house, a tent or a building here on earth. But that's not the goal. The goal is not to build a temple in Jerusalem and all of us go to Jerusalem and start worshiping. That's not the goal. That's not what this is about. This is about getting to the real temple of Elohim, the new Jerusalem that comes down. That's the temple where Elohim is and the Lamb is. That's the focus, not what's going on in the Middle East. So here is number 7 on your notes. A little bit of review, but you guys, this is important. Sickness and death. They're related. Why? Because really, if somebody eventually dies, it's because of why? Because you got sick. You got sick. And sickness eventually, if it's bad enough, is going to lead you to death. So here's the story of the garden. You remember this, the whole thing with the 2 angels. We followed the cherubim all the way through the text last week. Well, here it is, Genesis chapter 2 and verse 16. It says, and Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, Adam, saying, eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For in that day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. Death will enter you on that day. Now, here's a question. I want you to think about this. I'm going to give you what I believe the answer is. But there's, different ideas, different concepts that people have about this. As we were created, or as Adam and the woman, as the garden story tells us, were they created as eternal beings or were they temporal beings? Were they supposed to just be there for eternity, or was there going to be a limit because they were made of the dust of the earth? Right? We know that. Adam's made from outside of the garden, and he's put inside the garden. We are all made of the dust of the earth. Well, I want you to think about this, because after the instruction is given, if you eat of this, you will die. If you disobey, if you do what you're not supposed to do, death enters you. Obviously, we know the story. They do it. The woman and the man, they do it. What enters them immediately? Death. They immediately become what? From the context of everything we just read, just like a woman with an issue of blood, or just as if you had touched a dead body. You cannot any longer be in the presence of Elohim. You got to get out of the temple. That's why they are kicked out. And listen to what it says, and this will hopefully solidify my theory about this. Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. It says, and Yahweh Elohim said, see, the man has become like one of us to know good and evil. And now, lest he put out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. How were they supposed to live forever? Let's just extrapolate here for a second. Let's think logically. If the tree of life was there and they had access to it, they were told you can eat of it, how were they to live forever? By eating of the tree of life. Until uncleanness now comes in them, and we don't want them in this unclean state forever, so now let's not have them touch the tree of life. Let's remove them from the tree of life. So we're just putting 2 and 2 together here, being a little bit of a detective or a sleuth. Was it that Adam was made eternal, that is his flesh, the body that we have, that this was made to last forever? Or did Abba provide something that we must eat that would have allowed them to live forever? That's what the text says as how I read it, as I'm looking at this. Let's get them out of here. Make sure that they don't touch the tree of life and live forever. So Yah Elohim sent him out of the garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken, and he drove the man out, and he placed cherubim at the east of the garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. So now they are prevented from accessing the tree of life, prevented from coming into the temple of Elohim, and now the whole story begins. And everything from this point is a story on what? Teaching us how to get back to the tree of life in the temple. That's the whole story. Can everybody see how these are all starting to become connected? I know we're going around the mountain, but there's some major connections here. They are kicked out and not given access to the tree of life and certainly to the temple of Elohim. That was there. Now, I said last week, we did the whole thing with the gardener where Miriam believes when she sees the Mashiach that he's, at least she thinks he's the gardener. But he tells her, I'm not the gardener, right? He's not the gardener. He isn't. Now, we can see the analogy because Adam is definitely the gardener. He's the priest. I can see why she would think that. Messiah is definitely the priest. But Messiah told us explicitly, who's the gardener? Father is the gardener. Who's the tree? Who's the true vine? He is. This is garden talk. This is Garden of Eden talk. So just in that analogy, they are being prevented from maybe an actual physical tree, but what does it represent? Mashiach. In the place where Elohim is, because they are unclean and they must now be removed. And then everything Elohim does from this point is to teach us how to get back. Now, if we talked about last week, whether it's Adam and Eve and they have children and they populate everything, or other humanity made, whichever one you want to believe, how does their actions cause death for the whole world? Let's assume that they have their children and their children populate everything. Well, then you would say, well, genetically it's passed on from person to person to person. Okay, that's fine. What if there are others that are there that he was to be a priest to help the instruct into the things of Elohim, to bring them to the garden to be able to eat of the tree of life as time went on? Why would their sin, because we read this all the time, Adam sinned and his sin gets passed on to us, and the wages of sin is death. How does that get passed on to us? Well, if we are made, humanity, I'm talking about all the way back here, if we are made as human beings, they obviously lived a very, very long time. I had a couple of these. Let me see which. I thought I put it in here. Maybe I didn't. They wound up living of an extremely, extremely long time. You read the story. I did put it in here. So here it is. Number 8 on your notes. It's too small for me to see. Number 8 on your notes. These are just some verses right out of Genesis, but I want you to follow something here. So Adam gets kicked out. Obviously, he doesn't die that day, but death entered him, which makes him unclean. And then it says, so all the days of Adam lived, he was 930 years, and he died. Wow. Wow. Could you imagine living 930 years? We're impressed that our nation is 250 years old. Adam was not over 900 years old. He just got kicked out of the garden. He is humanity in its best and purest form. If he lives 900 and something years old, even if he was still in the garden, he wouldn't have to even eat of the tree of life for a few hundred, 6, 7, 8, 900 years later, and then start to eat of the tree of life. And anybody else. So how does his sin get passed down? How do we all die? Here's my understanding of it. If by his sin he brings death because he's disobeyed, but he's become unclean, he's brought death because they no longer have access to the tree of life. And if his actions mean that none of us have access to the tree of life, what must we all therefore do? Die. Therefore, sin gets moved throughout all of human time. Here's a couple others. Listen to this. And so all the days of Seth were 920 years. Wow. Another, almost a millennia. And he died. Now, here's chapter 25 in Genesis. This is Abraham. So time is moving along. When you get to Abraham, it says, and these are the years of Abraham's life, which he lived 175 years. Wait. Now that's a long time, right? But that is not 900 and blah, 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 blah. That's a small piece of what do you notice happening as time away from the tree of life increases? Lifespan decreases, sickness increases. Here is Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 7, Moses. It says, and Moshe was 120 years old, and then he died. It's getting lower and lower and lower until we read this in the Psalms. Psalm chapter 90 and verse 10. The days of our lives are 70 years, or if due to strength, 80 years, yet the best of them is but toil and exertion, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. We went from 930 years coming out of the garden to, if you're lucky, if you don't eat McDonald's, if you keep your sugar down, your A1C down, if you keep your blood pressure, if you exercise, 70, 80 years on average. That's so literally, uncleanness has what? Grown. And it's gotten bigger, and it's gotten bigger and stronger and stronger. But the goal is to get us back there and to get rid of our uncleanness so that we can approach the tree of life again. At least that's the ultimate goal here. As you can see on the picture there, that's just an AI version. They're all the same guy. They're all the same guy. We all remember, now it may just be 70, 80, 90 years for most, but there's some people that live 100 and over, but they're far and few between. But 70, 80, 90 years. You all remember when you were 20. Now some of you may still be in your 20s. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. You all remember when you were in your 20s and you were healthy and you felt good and you get up in the morning and there'd be no crazy noises or poppings or crackings or ooh, ah. You know, I saw a video the other day of somebody getting out of bed. It was the Michael Jackson song, Thriller, right? The guy's getting out of bed. It's like, you know, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's how I look every morning. And then you get to your 50s and you start to make noises with the joints and things bother you and you can't eat after a certain amount of time. You can't have coffee after a certain amount of time. You're going to be up all night. All of a sudden, the things you did in your 20s, you just can't do anymore because what's happening to us? We're dying. We're dying. We're on that path to old age. We call it old age, but ultimately, what's the end of old age? Golden years. Saw a neat meme. Guy says, you know, I always thought in my old age I was going to do a whole bunch of traveling. I just didn't know it was going to be back and forth to doctors. But and then you see the last picture there. Same guy in his 70s or his 80s. Muscles all gone. Yes. You know what that's from? Our bodies not having access to the tree of life. Think about that for a second. And it's happening in all of us. This process is going on in all of us. Death or sickness, because sickness is just the prelude to death, can come into the house of Elohim. You can't do it. That's why all of the ceremonies, that's why the red heifer, that's why they had to at least make a cleansing of the outside of the flesh to come into that earthly tabernacle to teach us the principle that this earthly tabernacle is just about the outside of the flesh, but to get to where Elohim really is, oh, you need an entire cleansing, washing, not just the flesh, the conscience, the thoughts, everything of who we are, because it's gotten worse and worse and worse. We read So again, we blame Adam for the whole garden thing, that, oh, he sinned and now all men sin. Yeah, well, Adam and Eve, obviously, or Eve was deceived. Adam follows the whole thing. They get out, and even if they have children and they populate, or there are children already, whatever the issue is, at some point, what happens to them? Why do they keep going down this horrible path? The watchers saw the daughters of men, and they came in unto them, and they taught them all sorts of things and did all sorts of things, and the hearts of men grew evil continually. All we needed was the nudge, and now there's no instruction to get back. There's no access until it gets to the point where he has to wipe everything out and begin anew for the second time. Anyway. So, death does get passed down to everybody, and with that comes sickness for all of us. We all get sick. When you're young, it's not so bad. The older you get, the more dangerous it is. And when you're really up there, a common cold, a bad flu can do you in. That's just part of the life in which we live. Now, think about this for a second. The one who is going to heal us of this uncleanliness, now we're talking about the temple, right? The red heifer. The one who is going to heal, to give life, is unclean. It has to be unclean before it can give life. This is the process that he's tutoring us in, teaching us in, to understand our faith as to why this is this way, why this is the procedure, why the temple, why the tabernacle, why all of these laws that people say, oh, they don't really mean anything, we just throw it away, it's not for us. No, you throw that away and you misunderstand the whole thing. Now, I know we say, yeah, Jesus comes and he saves me, and that's great, that's good, but you got to know why. You got to know why. You got to know what the mechanics are here. How are you going to explain it to somebody else who doesn't want to believe any of that stuff? I don't want to believe that. And all of a sudden, you start going through the history of it like, oh, wait a minute, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's been written about over and over and over. It's a single story all the way through. Here is Leviticus chapter, not Leviticus, I think it's Exodus. I think I got a typo there. Oh, no, it is Leviticus. 15, verse 27. Anyone who touches them, that is a woman or with a woman with an issue of blood, anyone who touches them is unclean, and shall wash his garments and shall bathe in water and be unclean till evening. What are we learning about being unclean? We pass it on. We pass it on to everybody we touch. That's the principle that's being taught to us. How does the whole world get into the position that it's in today? Well, we all affect each other. We've all touched each other. And unfortunately, uncleanliness attracts. So it says here, anyone that this woman touches, to them they're unclean, and they shall wash their garments and shall bathe in water, and they would be unclean to the evening. And all that means in a Levitical sense is that they just can't go to the temple to what? The next day. All right, so even that, they're telling us this can be a temporary thing. There's a remedy for this. Here's Numbers chapter 19, verse 1. It says, and Yah spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, this is the law of the Torah which Yahweh has commanded, saying, speak to the children of Israel that they bring you a red heifer, a perfect one, in which there is no blemish on which a yoke has never come. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest and shall bring it outside of the camp. You can see on the picture there. The picture there is the high priest and the other priests that are around there with them. They've got the red heifer on the wood. He's got the hyssop in his hand. He's got the scarlet cloth in his hand. And behind them is the camp of Israel. This must be done outside of the camp. This couldn't be done. You couldn't walk into the gate to the tabernacle. You couldn't do this in the tabernacle. You couldn't do this at the altar. This, the thing that makes uncleanliness cleanly, the thing that deals with death, has to be done outside of the camp. That's the Levitical rule. Shall give it to the priest, and he shall slay it outside the camp, and he shall slay it before him. Verse 6, and the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet and throw them in the midst of the fire of the burning heifer. Then the priest shall wash his garments and shall bathe his body in water, and afterward come into the camp, but the priest is unclean to the evening. Like I said, everybody that's part of this ceremony is what? Unclean. Everybody that touches it becomes unclean. And just a really amazing picture right there. I thought that was so cool. So what does this mean for us? Let's pull this full circle now. From death to life. The words that we read in the beginning. Let me read them one more time. Truly, truly, I say to you, when the master says truly, truly, we ought to what? Pay attention. He who hears my word, all the stuff we just talked about, and everything he says, and believes in him who sent me, possesses everlasting life, and does not come into judgment, but passes from death, the stage we are all affected by and in, unclean, to what? Life, or clean. Clean. Number 10 on your notes there, picture obviously of the crucifixion. I want you to notice something about this. Because I've had people ask this before, so if Messiah is the Passover lamb, or he is the Yom Kippur goat, or he's the peace, and he is all of those things speak of him, then why wasn't he sacrificed inside of the actual walls of Jerusalem, inside of the temple? Why did he die in there? Why would it be outside of the camp? Because he's cleansing death and sickness. And that red heifer has to be killed outside of the camp. And he becomes unclean for us. He is clean. There is no spot or blemish in him. He can have someone who has an issue of blood and touch him. He can have someone who is at death and raise. He can be outside of Lazarus' tomb. And yet when he gets to the cross, he is still a pure red heifer without spot or blemish. And then what happens? He becomes everything he touched. Or let me say it this way. He becomes everything that has touched us and everything we have touched others with. And he takes that to the cross. And behind him, outside of the camp, is where this happens. Behind him is Jerusalem. Behind him, outside, is the temple. He is the red heifer. Here's Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 10. We have a slaughter place from which those serving the tent have no authority to eat. Understand what he's saying? This thing, well, let me show you this. Let me show you. I want you to see this, that picture is that picture. They're the same picture. They're the same picture. One's that type that helps us to understand. The other one becomes the reality of the coming Messiah. But they both serve the same purpose. One to cleanse the outer flesh, the other one to cleanse the conscience, who we are on the inside. Both of them to deal with sickness and death. Messiah to deal with sickness and death and to give us life eternal. To make us clean so that we can enter where? The temple. And we can have access to the tree of life. Actually, the access has already started. But listen to this. Hebrews 13 again. We have a slaughter place from which those serving the tent have no authority to eat. No priest could eat that. No priest could eat that. That was a total burnt, everything was burnt to ash. You didn't eat that. You ate the Passover, you ate the different offerings, the free will offerings. You ate that stuff. You ate the bread, but you couldn't eat this. No one was allowed to eat this. This is why Saul's telling us in the book of Hebrews, we have a slaughter place from which those serving the tent have no authority to eat. For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the set apart place by the high priest for sin are burned on the outside of the camp. So you burn it on the outside of the camp, gets put into a place for 3 days, then it's mixed with water, now it's clean, and then you take that and you can make people clean inside the temple, you can make the temple, you can anoint the temple, you can make anybody that's gone through whatever the thing happens to be, touching somebody that's died, being in a funeral, you can make them all clean now so that they can come in. But that which makes you clean to enter into has to be unclean outside first. And that's what Messiah did. They are burned outside the camp. Verse 12. And so Yeshua also suffered outside of the gate or outside of the camp to set apart, and I put the PDP in there, to make clean the people with his own blood. Let us then go to him outside the camp. This is so important. Listen to what Saul is saying here. Let us, you and I, go to him, or Golgotha. How many songs you've got written about that? Coming to the foot of the cross, and although there's all the hymns and stuff that are out there. You got to go outside the camp. You have to leave the temple service. You've got to leave the temple. You've got to leave what the Sadducees are doing and the Pharisees are doing. You've got to go outside of that to get cleansed from death in order to make it to the real temple. And so Yeshua suffered outside the gate to make set apart, to clean the people with his own blood. Let us then go to him outside of the camp, bearing his reproach. For we have, this is important, we have no lasting city here. What city is he referring to? Jerusalem. Let that sink in a second. He's saying the city behind him is not the answer. That's going backwards. That's not the answer. Building a temple is not the answer. Creating a Sanhedrin is not the answer. Recreating an Aaronic priesthood is not the answer. Sacrificing a red heifer is not the answer. The answer's already been given. Its purpose already done. And Saul is explicitly here, and in other places where he says that Jerusalem is the city of slavery, saying the same thing here. For we have no lasting city here. That holy place, that temple is no longer holy and no longer a temple. And 40 years later, what happens to it? Messiah destroys it. Destroys it. Saul's words come true. For we have no lasting city here, but we seek one coming. There is a city, there is a Jerusalem. It's just not the one in the Middle East. But there is a Jerusalem that all the people of Elohim should be seeking, who have gone outside the camp to see the red heifer and take part in that. He dies, and what must we also do? Die. Now, that doesn't mean that, your heart stopped and you fell on the floor. It means I'm not letting this, which is still death. See, because here's the thing. Death is a powerful, powerful enemy. That tells us later on, what's the final enemy to be defeated? It's not defeated yet. Yeah, I know Messiah rose and all the rest of that. It's not defeated yet. How do I know? What's going to happen to all of us one day? You're going to die. So it may be on life support itself. It may be going crazy. It may know that its time is short. But the curse that started by kicking them out of the garden is still going strong in our flesh. Because my flesh gets sick. My flesh hurts. My flesh makes all sorts of noises, smells, loses hair, all sorts of things, teeth. Everything. Yes. If you want to go through a whole list, we can do that. All true. And ultimately, if I'm not there to see it, we all will go to the ground and return to the dust that we were made out of outside of the garden. But if we begin to eat of the tree of life now, then the inside already has working on it what would have kept them alive in the garden, what would have kept humanity alive had all of that not happened and been invited the right way through the priest to come and eat of the tree of life. That is now beginning in us, and it should be growing. Your understanding, your desire to live a certain way, to be a certain way. The psalmist said we live 70, 80 years, but they are years of toil. When you certainly put your mind to walking in the things of Elohim, it's hard. There's toil. There's hardships, there's bad things that happen. And I know, yes, we should pray for healing for people that are sick. That's an absolute instruction that's given to us. But that doesn't mean that healing happens all the time. The curse is strong. And if Messiah decides to heal us, it will be for his glory that will bring his name, make his name glorified and bring attention to him. But let's be honest with each other. That's not happening like we read in the gospel accounts, is it? I know there's a lot of preachers out there will say, come, 10,000 people come in, everybody come on up and swing your coat or blow on them or something, and everybody falls down and say, oh, I'm healed. No, they're all walking out of there crickety-crackety and hurting and popping pills and doing everything else that everybody else does. He does heal. But we are also pressed. We also struggle. We also go through hardship. Wide is the road, easy is the way, many there are that take it. Narrow is the road. That word narrow means it gets more and more narrow. Ever walk down like a street or something, and it's just getting more and more. That's the way. The way is narrow and difficult. That word difficult, it's not just narrow. It has pressure on it. It squeezes us because we all then have to make decisions between the nature that we know is going to die and the nature that we know is going to live. And that puts us in situations where we are pressed. Sickness presses us now. Aches and pains and trial and hardship. That's what the word actually is in the Greek there. It means tribulation. It's often translated as tribulation. Tribulation presses us. But that's the way to life. Just like the idea of an olive press. An olive press squeezes the olive. But what comes out of that? Pure olive oil. The greatest press is Messiah in the Garden of Gethsemane, which is an olive press. He's in this flesh taking on our sin, and he is pressed. And sweat and tears like blood come out of him. If the Mashiach had to be pressed, what of us? Of course we'll be pressed. Of course you're going to go through hardship. And I'm not telling you not to pray for healing. You should. We all do. But I'm not telling you you're not going to get sick either. I'm not telling you you're not going to get some bad news from the doctor one day. We are all going to be at some point like Jairus and his family. Look at the picture, real quick. Look at the picture. We're all going to be in that position. Around the bed of our loved one, our mom, our dad, our sons, our daughters. Pray that as a parent, I pray all the time. Abba, let me go first. I don't want my kids to go before me. Let me go first. It's just me. I don't want to see my kids in that. I can't imagine what was going on in Jairus' mind. Just like this woman, there's things that we've got to deal with for years and years and years. And it seems like there's no end in sight. And yet, what do we just stop? No. We're already eating of the tree of life. It's already in us. So whether he extends his hand to heal the physical flesh or not, whether he extends his hand to reanimate dead tissue or not, he has already healed us all. All. Because even when I do lay down in the grave on that day, I know that there is a day coming when I will hear his voice. And like that young girl, rise up. And there will be no more sickness, no more arthritis, no more cancer, no more heart disease, no more diabetes, and the list goes on and on and on. That will be no more. And at that point, we are now ready to enter where? The temple. Oh, full circle. Isn't that good? Isn't that good? First Corinthians 5:21, for he made him, Messiah, who knew no sin, did not sin himself, to be sin for us. Let me say that another way. He made him, Messiah, who was clean, to become unclean for us, so that in him we might become clean or healed and be given the righteousness of Elohim. This, beloved, is the gospel. So, John chapter, I went ahead. John chapter 19. This is crazy. I got to get an ooh-ah after this one. I'm expecting an ooh-ah, right? We're getting to the, we've gone around a couple times, now we're getting to that moment. You thought all the other stuff was moments. No. The moment's coming. Listen. John chapter 19. After that. After this, Joseph of Arimathea, being a taught one of Yeshua, but secretly. So he was there. He was a disciple. The guy who carries the cross for Mashiach. For fear of the Yehudim, the Jews, asked Pilate that he might take the body of Yeshua, and Pilate gave permission. I want you to think about this for a second. Mashiach celebrates Passover with his disciples. Now, I know this is the whole calendar fiasco thing we're talking about here, because he celebrates Passover with his disciples, but the Jews' Passover isn't until the next day. There's different calendars going on. We talked about this before. Maybe we'll get into it again. But here it is, black and white for us. So he celebrates Passover. On Passover day, which is from that evening when you eat it, the entire next day, he dies. That night is a high Sabbath. It's the beginning of, it's unleavened bread. Unleavened bread is now upon us. It says, and after this, Joseph of Arimathea, being a taught one of Yeshua, but secretly for fear of him, asked Pilate that he might take the body of Yeshua, and Pilate gave permission. Therefore, he came and took the body, and Yeshua and Nicodemus now. That's the guy all the way from the beginning. You must be born again. who at first came to Yeshua by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds. Then they took the body of Yeshua, which was what? Unclean. He was dead. Like Trump says, he was dead. As these two men go and take the body of Messiah, what are they? Unclean. They cannot celebrate the Passover. They can't do unleavened bread. They can't go into the temple proper. They've now got to go through the whole process. Does it look like they cared? No. They did it. That night, taking him down for the beginning of the high Sabbath, therefore they came and took the body. They took the body of Yeshua and bound it in linen wrappings with spices, and as was the habit of the Yehudim for burial. And the place where he was impaled there was a garden. Oh yeah. And in the garden was a fresh tomb. PDP version. The red heifers now, ash. Anybody who touches the ash is unclean. And then you get a guy to take the ashes and bring it to a clean place where death has never touched. And you put it in that clean place for 3 days. And after 3 days, when it gets taken out of that clean place, it's clean and it can clean everybody. Ooh, ah. That's the moment. Yeah, go ahead, give a hand clap. I got to stop yelling. It messes up the volume. But this is great stuff. Like, you can't do this whispering. I'm sorry. Got that little Pentecostal thing still going on in the back, or the Baptist thing. So just like the instruction of the Torah, those around them are unclean, and he has to be put in a clean place. A tomb in which no one has ever laid, which means death never touched it. Death never touched it. And the place where he was impaled, there was a garden, and in the garden a fresh tomb in which no one had been laid there then, because of the preparation day of the Yehudim, the high Sabbath, they laid Yeshua because the tomb was near. Now we find out later on, after all the Sabbaths go on, that Miriam and the women go there, because they didn't know that Nicodemus and Joseph, that they already anointed the body. They had no idea. They hadn't talked. And so they go back on the third day, except on the third day, if you don't get it on the third day, the seventh day, you're still unclean. What's the seventh day? Resurrection. You got to have the third day to get the seventh day. And they laid him in the tomb because it was near. Beloved, that's the gospel. In the story of the woman with the issue of blood, and in the story of Jairus' daughter, sickness and death both need to be healed. And Messiah does that. And yet, the curse, the flesh, we still live in it. And it's still doing what it does. It's going to run its course in all of us till Mashiach comes. It's just going to run its course. Do everything you can to strengthen it, feed it the right way, exercise it, dye your gray hair, whatever you got to do. Stay as young as you can for as long as you can. But ultimately, the battle of the flesh is lost. But that doesn't mean that life is over. You can see in the picture there, that's really the same picture as Jairus' house. 2 different time frames, but it's what every family has gone through forever. Certainly, when this comes, that is certainly how I would like to go out. With family and friends around me, people that you love. That's my prayer anyway. But I'm going to leave you on a high note here. Don't want to leave you depressed. In the meantime, we have access, or we have access now to the tree of life, so begin eating. You know what we just did for like the last almost hour here? Hour. You know what we just did? We ate. And he wants to remind us to keep doing it with that. We ate. So words that bring life and understanding to the inner person we just ate of. Those words will be in us on that day we go to the ground. And they will be with us when we rise. Because we have access to the tree of life now. And Revelation tells us, Revelation 21 verse 4, and Elohim shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, like that picture. And there shall be no more death, nor mourning, nor crying. And there shall be no more pain, for the former matters have passed away. Oh, say amen. I can't wait to wake up in the morning and my back not hurt. Really, I can't wait. Sometimes when it happens and I wake up and my first thought is, wait, it didn't hurt. Then you take 2 or 3 steps like, oh, okay, yep, we're there. Verse 22. And I saw no dwelling place in it, the New Jerusalem. No need for the physical temple that we have here down on the earth. No need for what they're trying to do in Jerusalem. No need for it. And I saw no dwelling place in it, for Yah El Shaddai is its dwelling place, and the Lamb. And the city had no need of the sun nor of the moon to shine in it. For the glory of Elohim lighted it, and the Lamb is its lamp. So the temple is Elohim Father and Elohim the Son. They are the temple. One is the gardener, the other's the tree. And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the kings of the earth shall bring their glory into it. And its gates shall not be shut at all by day. This means everybody that makes it there. People of all nations, all tribes. It's not just for one group. This is for all the world. That's why we're praying for all the nations. And they shall bring the glory and the appreciation of the nations into it. And there shall by no means enter into it whatever is unclean. That's it. That sews the whole thing up. Nice big bow. What is unclean cannot enter it. That's been the story the whole time. Neither anyone doing abomination and falsehood, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. That is Elohim's word for you for today. From death, truly, we pass from death to life. Amen. That's cool stuff. That helps put the gospel in perspective. And it's a great tool to speak to other people about. Because people ask, oh yeah, well if your God's so great, then how come he didn't heal you? Because my forefathers. Because we keep touching everybody. We live in amongst the people that are unclean and we keep touching everybody. Stop touching me. No, don't say that to them. It's just me saying it to you. Abba's good. He has the whole story worked out. We just got to take the time to go through it to really understand what this thing is about. Man, it's great. Yeah, tell people your sin can be forgiven. That's the first step. But that's the first step, right? That's the first step. That's the first talent. It's not about just getting the first talent. It's about gaining interest on all the talents, about learning, And he who has, more will be given, so that he has in abundance. Pressed down, shaken, and overflowing. See, we hear the gospel message today as God's going to do this for you and buy this for you and give you a house. And that's not pressed down, shaken, and overflowing. That's living for this. And listen, cool, you got it. Awesome. You better make sure you use your stuff for the kingdom too. But the pressed down, shaken, overflowing, the cleanliness, all of that, that's riches. And on that day, it's going to be worth it. Father, we love you. We thank you for your goodness, for your mercy, for your patience with us. We thank you for such an amazing, amazing story, how it connects from one end of the book to the other end of the book. Truly, this Bible is miraculous. This story is miraculous. It is your hand given to us in ink, from stones to paper to papyrus to computer screens. It still teaches us your ways. Help us to see Messiah in all things and to understand the story in every way that you've told us, that we might help others to understand as well. To you, Master, be glory, honor, praise, and power to the Lamb, for you are worthy. You are the Lamb. You are the goat. You are the red heifer. You are the bread offering. You are the drink offering. You are the burnt offering. You are the peace offering. You are the transgression offering. You are all things to us. And in you is life. And we love you for it. In your name, Master. Amen and amen. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. Sorry about the notes. You can download them and print them out. Listen to it again. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. You can do it real quick. You want to be part of the kingdom, get this thing out, hit that thumbs up button. Hit the other buttons there to get subscribed and just be part of what we're doing. Download the app and come and visit us. Passover's coming up. We still got some room, so come and visit with us. We'd love to have you. In the meantime, guys, enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. Say with me, everybody, Shabbat. Peace.